watching closely.
What's the secret, Max?
You just gotta find something you love to do and then do it for the rest of your life.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Hello, and welcome to The Establishing Shot, a podcast where we do deep dives into directors and their filmographies. I am your host, Eli Price, and we are here on episode 109 of the podcast. Just chugging along in our Spielberg series as usual, as we have been for a long time. Kind of like a quick future self-edit. I have already recorded the Ready Player One episode, and there was a movie draft with that, and I'm pretty sure I announced that as episode 109 because I recorded them backwards and got my numbers mixed up. And so just future editing myself, that's actually going to be episode 111. So when you hear me in that episode, I'm just wrong. Unless I edit it in post and fix what I say, then just ignore all this. This is 109 of the podcast, and we are going to be covering Spielberg's movie, The Post, today. Excited. I was excited to revisit this movie. I saw it in theaters when it came out, and I haven't seen it since. So this was one of those that I was like, I'm ready to revisit this movie. Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep, gonna be fun. But to do that with me, I have a new guest on the show this week. Roslyn Hernandez is joining me. She is a Latino public theologian, content producer, creative strategist, and spiritual director, passionate about resourcing emerging adults as they navigate faith, identity, and justice. She does a lot of sociocultural awareness and integrating kind of spirituality and activism, kind of a holistic approach to all those things. Just oftentimes kind of doing what we do here, looking at the intersection of life and culture, and a lot of times specifically theology and culture too, which is cool. And so I'm excited to introduce Roslyn. I would love for you to kind of expound on some of the work that you do, and how maybe start with just in general, and then maybe how it relates to film, how you kind of got into doing that sort of work, integrated with looking at film and reviewing movies and stuff.
Yeah, so I actually started with film instead of theology. I have a degree in film and media studies from UC Santa Barbara, and I think film and media studies was my first love, in like intellectual love and artistic love. I've always been passionate about the art form of image and how cultures represent themselves and process themselves through their cultural products, one of them being film. I do come from a background where film, magazines, books, television is all kind of looked at through a sociological lens to see what the culture is thinking about itself and how we are processing what in a lot of film circles we call the human condition. And so that really came together with theology and with social justice for me more in seminary, where I guess I would say officially or formally in seminary, because I was already thinking integratively about how these two come in contact or intersect with one another, which is something that I actually honestly often had frustrations about when I was younger. I come from a Christian tradition where the secular is over there and the like sacred and like church stuff is over here. And I always thought that it's important for us to think of ourselves holistically and to engage all aspects of ourselves in a way that is not just holy or biblical or faith-based, but also in ways that are everyday political or cultural aspects of ourselves. And so now, yeah, I got to do that for Real Spirituality, which is now Brem Studio at Fuller Seminary. And then I got to do that with another magazine. I can't remember the name. I'm like blanking on the name right now, but okay. So I got to do that with Think Christian as well. And now I'm kind of like writing on my own, doing podcasts with other people. But I also produce podcasts. And so I do always try to take some of that narrative, storytelling, and sociological aspect of processing what we're experiencing in life, in social justice and activism, and putting it all together in ways that particularly younger audiences, young adults, millennials, and Gen Z can understand and engage with.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. And so, you know, you have this background in film, and then you got into theology, and then now you're like, okay, how do I like marry these two loves that I've developed? What does that look like? Like what sort of things have you written that or what's your, I guess the better question is like, what is your framework or methodology through which you like bring those two lenses together to like look at film with that kind of theological holistic, you know, view of life, and analyze film through that lens as well? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I've written about pop culture. I've written about one of the really fun things that I got to do, I think it was last year actually, was write about Beyonce's latest album, the country music album that she had, and write about how that is, you know, like theological in some ways, or how that was theological for me. But it also goes the other way around. We do have hermeneutics or ways of reading the Bible that can be informed by the ways that we approach film and the ways that film is studied. So it kind of does go both ways, and it's helpful for us, and which is something that I will talk about later, or that something that came up for me as I was watching the post, that really something that my background in film and media studies has helped me with is in media literacy, which we needed both for engaging cultural media products as we need it for engaging the Bible, which is also a cultural media product for specific people.
Sure, yeah.
History.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really like how oftentimes I guess the way I like to think of it is like when you watch film or really like interact with any kind of art film, oftentimes it kind of there's like a dialogue with that art and your life, and you can kind of like bring who you are to it, and it kind of brings something out of the art, whether it's film or something else that maybe someone else wouldn't see, because you're bringing yourself and your life to it, but also like it's bringing something to you too, that maybe you had never considered before, a different perspective, maybe an encouragement or a confirmation, or you know. And so it's like this dialogue that you have with you know, in our specific context of what we're doing with film, you know, and I've always like really loved that and tried to lean into that kind of dialogue you have with art, and specifically film for me. So yeah, I really appreciate, you know, kind of that perspective that you're bringing. Where could people where's a good place or central place for like people to kind of keep up with what you're working on and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so I am on social media for now.
For now.
Social media is also getting a little tricky, but
Yeah.
yes, I am on Instagram, and my handle is at Roslyn M Hernandez, and I have a website, so that will continue and that's roslynhernandez.com.
Great. Yeah. And I'll make sure to link those in the episode description so people can find them and click them easy and go follow. But follow for now, or, bookmark the website,
Yeah.
So speaking of interacting with film, we, of course, are in our Spielberg series covering all of his films. We're nearing the end. The post is, I think, as of this recording, fourth to last. And yeah, it's near the end of his career. But I always like to ask my first time guests what their kind of first memories are of the director we're covering. So do you have any kind of first memories of watching a Spielberg movie or realizing that Spielberg was a guy?
The first thing that came to mind is actually not something that he directed, but it's something that he produced. And it's not a movie, it's a television show. And
Okay.
it's gonna age me. It's very much of my generation. It's the Animaniacs, which is a cartoon series that was out in the 90s. And actually, I even wrote a paper about the Animaniacs when I was in undergrad. That's how much I like it. It's one of my favorite cartoons. And I've just recently watched that series that's on Netflix called Titans, The Rise of Hollywood. And the Warner Brothers story is really prominent, a lot more prominent than it was in my film history classes.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm kind of thinking about the Animaniacs in a different light after knowing more about the history of the Warner Brothers and some research that I did on my own. So, Yakko, which is one of the three Animaniac siblings, is oh, okay, interesting. Got it. Yeah. So that's my first memory, or the first thing that I thought of. But I think film-wise, it's probably Indiana Jones or Jurassic Park. I think those are the biggest films of my childhood that were directed by him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's kind of the typical response is depending on what generation you're from, it's either Indiana Jones or Jurassic Park or both sometimes. But yeah, I mean that's I know mine personally is Jurassic Park. But I mean there's so many you could say E.T. I know there's kind of the Indiana Jones generation Indiana Jones is the one that stood out, but E.T. was big too. It's just incredible how kind of we're here. This is being recorded and released in 2025. It's the 50-year anniversary of Jaws, and so we have 5 decades of Spielberg being kind of on top now, and so it's just cool to see a director like him that kind of spans generations. Maybe not I don't know if Gen Z has a Spielberg movie. Maybe West Side Story maybe is their Gen Z's Spielberg movie. I don't know. I need to kind of pick some brains of maybe this can be a project. This can be a project for you too. After this podcast, is pick some brains in the culture and see what the Spielberg movie of the Gen Z generation is. Because I'm assuming we're if you're mentioning Animaniacs, I'm assuming we're in the same millennial generation. And so, Jurassic Park is kind of ours, and the one before us was Indian ET. And so, yeah, I'd be curious to see if they have like a big one that stands out, like that was released in their lifetime, or if it's just kind of reaching back to those old ones and still kind of claiming those as the Spielberg movie of their youth. Um,
Mm.
I don't know. That'd be interesting to pick some brains and see. I might start doing that. But yeah, let's jump into the post. Yeah, this it began with kind of a young screenwriter named Liz Hannah. She was in her early 30s, had never written really a screenplay before, had been to film school and done some producing. Um, but yeah, this was really her first script. And yeah, I mean, basically, eventually gets into the hands of Steven Spielberg, and the rest is history. So, Hannah came across the story of Kay Graham in a book and read her autobiography, um, which Kay had won the Pulitzer Prize for, Catherine Graham, that is, and knew that this was potentially going to be her first screenplay. Um, a little backstory on Catherine Graham. She became the owner and publisher of the Washington Post at the age of 45 or 46, I think, after her husband's suicide in 1963. Her dad bought the Post back in 1933 and then entrusted it to his son-in-law, Catherine's husband. And Kay loved her father's decision, her father's choice, and never expected to be running the company. She thought her husband was a great choice. He was smart, capable, keeping it in the family, that sort of thing. And this unexpected, event happened, and she ended up with this company in her lap, and she had to decide: am I going to sell it? Am I going to keep it in my family to try to keep that legacy alive? And decided to keep it. And it was her first, the way her daughter described it was her first real job. Obviously she's raising kids, which is a job, and she's she did a lot of charity work too. With they ran in some, like, rich circles, powerful circles, just being, growing up in that sort of world. And but this was her first, like, I'm in charge, I'm going to work every day. Yeah, and a proper job, I guess you could say. And man, in the midst of this, she has to confront the White House with two scandals: the Pentagon Papers, which is the subject of this movie, in 1971, and then Watergate in 72, which the end of the movie teases. And all this while turning the Post into a paper that mattered, and all within a world of condescending men who looked down on her. And so, Liz Hannah comes across also the autobiography of the editor, Ben Bradley, and kind of said that unlocked the key to the story, or that was the key to unlock the story of her script. She said, quote, "I realized the movie wasn't only about Kay finding her voice in the Pentagon Papers and the publishing of them, but it was the origin story of this superhero team that was Graham and Bradley," unquote. So Kay hired Ben in 1965 and always had counted that as one of her best decisions she made. And Hannah writes the script in the summer of 2016. By October 2016, Amy Pascal, who used to work for Sony Pictures and now has her own production company, Pascal Pictures, won a bid for the script. And she kind of felt a kindred spirit with Kay when she read the script. And her husband was actually a New York Times reporter, so she had that connection. Her dad worked in the same office as Daniel Ellsberg at Rand, so a lot of connections there. And then, she begins to circle it around Hollywood. And in February of 2017, she sends the script to Amblin producer Krieger, Christy McCosco Krieger, who we've heard before, does a lot of producing of Spielberg films. And Spielberg had just had to cancel the kidnapping of Edgardo Morarta, a film that he was kind of in the works of getting started, and kind of canceled that early 2017. Reads the script for this in February, and just jumps on it. The themes, hotly debated topics around the Trump administration, the quote unquote alternative facts of the inauguration attendance, the tweet tirades of the president at the time, just really wanting to, jump on this film and address this topic. And also a lot of coincidental connections to the people. He had known Bradley long before the film came about. Ben Bradley, that is. They had neighboring homes in East Hampton on Long Island. He had dedicated the film to Nora Ephron, who passed in 2012. She was a journalist, writer, director. You probably recognize her name. She lived in East Hampton too, across the street from Ben Bradley, and had worked briefly on All the President's Men. Their script wasn't used, but nonetheless, a lot of interesting connections there. Spielberg even said if she was still alive, Nora Ephron would have directed this movie. Months before filming, the cast is locked in. Josh Singer brought on, writer of Spotlight, did work on The West Wing. Spielberg really wants to bring the weight of factual accuracy to the story before filming. He brings things like Nixon's voice being brought in. He listened to a bunch of recordings from the Nixon White House and incorporated that into the film. He did a lot of consultation with Post and Times journalists, Kay's son and grandson and daughter, and people close to Ben Bradley, and Daniel Ellsberg was brought in to consult. So just wanting to bring the weight of that to the movie. But nonetheless, during pre-production, there was some protesting from the staff at the New York Times. The Pentagon paper, was their scoop, and their name was the one that appeared on the Supreme Court decision, and they felt a certain way about it in May of 2017. So, I mean, they're not even probably filming yet. Some New York Times people in the Columbia Journalism Review called Spielberg's future film stupid and took offense at Graham and the Post being put on equal footing with them. I think that's a little dumb, but whatever. Screenwriters were aware of this ambiguity and insisted that the focus is not on that sort of thing, but on explaining the paper's change in stature leading to Watergate, which I think, is important.
Hi. Quick reminder that you, yes, you, can be a huge help to the production of this show. If you visit establishingshotpod.com/donate, you'll find out how to join the Establishing Shot family through some giving tiers starting as low as $5 a month. You heard that right, only $5 a month. And not only will you be helping me keep the show going, but you'll also get some perks yourself, like early and ad-free episodes, bonus episodes, access to a Discord server where we can chat it up about the show and movies in general, and more. Might even let you choose a movie for me to review for the show. Check out that link in the show notes to learn more. Back to the show.
This is one of those, when you look through the crew of this movie, it's kind of like the typical Spielberg crew. So you've got Janusz Kaminski at the camera as the DP. You have Michael Kahn doing the editing. There's been a couple movies in a row where he has a co-editor with Shara Brashear. So I don't know if this is like a passing of the baton when Michael Kahn isn't editing anymore, then Sarah Brashear will edit the Spielberg movies if he keeps making them. John Williams doing the score, of course. His kind of typical sound guys with Gary Rydstrom and Richard Hims, who I imagine were just like recording a bunch of typewriters for this movie. Rick Carter is the production designer. and Anne Roth doing costumes. I think she's worked with him before, and yeah, I mean it's really Ellen Lewis does the casting. She does a lot of Spielberg casting, and um, I mean this is just like when you watch this movie and how kind of like just it's it's a movie, like it's a film. It moves and it's like it's efficient and it looks really good. And there's not really, to me, like there's not really a lot of wasted space in this movie, and to me it just speaks to kind of this. It's kind of like a veteran crew that just like knows how to turn those gears and pump out a movie. Um, yeah, do you ever get much into like the functioning of the kind of like machine that makes the movie? Have you ever like dug into that at all in your writing?
I do sometimes. It
Yeah.
depends on like the role. Um, I do like to look at diversity and like who's
Mm.
getting cast or who's doing the casting or that kind of stuff. That kind of tells you some
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
about the decisions that were made. Um, but I haven't dove super. I mean, I don't know that I entirely subscribe to the auteur theory.
Sure. Yeah.
Because a film, yeah, like yes, like Spielberg is the director. He's bringing his vision, but like he's has multiple people, like multiple people make a film. It's not a one person job.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like to recognize that other people are involved.
Yes.
But I don't often track many people's careers unless I'm like very interested in like
Yeah.
in them, like costume designers. I might track their careers or like look up or see like, oh, this looks familiar. I
Mm-hmm.
think I've seen this before, and then I look things up, but I haven't really tracked like entire crews
Yeah.
or collaborators, long-term collaborators with Spielberg.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one thing that's cool doing these series is you start to like pick up on like patterns of like who he's working with and like what sort of projects like he might bring on a certain like crew member for a kind of there's like a pattern of this type of movie he has like these people on and these other because Spielberg, he makes a variety of genres and styles of movies, and so but yeah, he definitely it is a cool thing whether it's I think Spielberg and another that I've done, Wes Anderson, they really kind of have like a thread of collaborators through their careers. And to me, that's like a really cool like community of artists like kind of working long term together is like a cool idea to me. So I just like really appreciate that when you can kind of find the people that like speak like you kind of develop a language with them, and you can kind of be on the same page artistically, and without having to like go over every single detail, and kind of understand what each other would do and what each other would want. I just think that's a really cool thing about film that that a lot of other art forms don't. Not very many art film forms have to that degree of such a large group of people coming together to like make some sort of art. Um, and one of the cool things I think in the special features they mentioned at on like the last day of shooting, they brought together all the women to take a photo of all the women on like in the cast and crew all together. And they were taking the picture, and then they were like, I guess someone like was like counting, and they realized, oh, there's actually more women working on this movie than men. So I think that's that's a good sign. I get like it's still like Spielberg is directing, white guy directing. There's John Williams doing the music, but you have a woman that wrote the the screenplay that this is built from, and a crew apparently full of women. So that's always like, I guess, reassuring at the least to hear that you're getting at least a lot of that perspective on a film's kind of centered around a woman. And so, yeah, I appreciated that aspect. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the cast, because this is it's a really great cast for one thing, I think. And I don't know if many people would disagree with that, but it was kind of Spielberg kind of like talks about it. This doesn't happen really. I've never really heard a director say this, but he was kind of like, yeah, all of my first choices were just available, and we just all came together and made it. So that's like a really crazy thing with this movie, that it was, it was kind of, he had finished filming Ready Player One. Ready Player One was in its long, CGI post-production phase, and he heard about this. He kind of read the script I think in February of 2017, and was like, I want to make this movie and put it out this year. And so, yeah, and somehow like the studio with Ready Player One, just, I guess you can't really tell Spielberg what to do. So they were like, yeah, I guess you can do that while we're doing the post for Ready Player One. And so during the time after filming Ready Player One, he was able to cast the movie, get all the pre-production work done, film it, edit it, and release it all before Ready Player One was like done and ready to release. And yeah, and one of the reasons that we'll get into later is because of how he and many others that were producing the movie felt that it was so pertinent to the moment, and wanted to get it out as soon as they could. But yeah, that probably this first part of the casting helped move it along, when you just call people and they're like, yeah, I'll be there.
I mean, it helped, as you said, you can't really tell Steven Spielberg what to do, and you call an actor and they're like, yeah. I'll work with you, they'll make themselves available. Yeah.
And I think, so like, obviously we'll probably talk Meryl Streep first, and I'm pretty sure I remember her saying, yeah, I read the script in March, and by May we were filming. And so it's fast, very fast. But yeah, Meryl Streep plays Katharine Graham. She had some chances to work with Spielberg before. She denied the role of Heinemann in Minority Report. It was a smaller role, and she didn't do that. She was the voice of the Blue Fairy in AI, so she had done some work with Spielberg, but just voice work. So she was, she had kind of talked about, she was excited to actually like do a actual work with Spielberg on this movie, and she had actually been interested in this script before Spielberg was involved. It had kind of been, it had been circling around Hollywood, the script, and she had already read it, I think, at some point, and or had heard about it and was interested in it. And yeah, so I think another thing was that Meryl Streep, if you remember back in 2017, at the Golden Globes, she had a very pointed speech that did not name the president of the time, and maybe this time too, by name, but was definitely a pointed speech that may or may not definitely did get a typical tweet that said, quote, Meryl Streep, one of the most overrated actresses in Hollywood, unquote, as if that has any weight to it at all to anyone who knows anything. But yeah, she was excited to work with Spielberg, and then just excited about the project kind of, and the, you know, the subject matter of it too, working on this. And yeah, I mean, she got to work researching, reading Kay Graham's autobiography, watching archive footage as actors do, you know, when you're playing a real person. And yeah, how did you feel about Meryl Streep in this movie? I don't. It may go without saying or asking, but we do have to talk about it. I mean,
Yeah. Yes, I hadn't seen the film before, and
okay.
I don't think I was super aware of this like historical event. So I kind of went in pretty blind or like new to the topic.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I feel like I've seen Meryl Streep films before, but, and maybe this is just a testament to how good of an actress she is, that I am not like, oh yeah, Meryl Streep, like all the, you know, roles that she's been or the characters she's played. But it really felt, I really felt the subtlety of her acting in ways that at first made me very frustrated, of course.
Right, right.
With the power dynamics, the gender power dynamics, and the just, everything else.
Yes.
But that same subtlety, using that, she is able to capture not just what Catherine might have felt in that time, but also what women would have felt like at that time. And the soft power that I think the film kind of shows throughout the narrative. She often tends to play small and to quote unquote save face for the men in the film, and maybe even like whispers, you know, like very tentatively she says something like "but" or, you know, "perhaps" or something like that, and then like does a total switch on the power dynamics or asserts her authority. So it was really interesting to see, especially as the narrative itself made that switch. But yeah, I really enjoyed her portrayal here.
Yeah, one of the things that was interesting to me was so in the special features, you know, her kid, like her son and one of her daughters is in there kind of in interviews, and her daughter was talking about how and she probably talks about it in her autobiography, I would imagine, that she really had a lot of self-doubt and was just like, I guess from her daughter's perspective, a lot of times her like timidity and self-doubt was kind of like a central part of like how she saw her mother, or like, I guess like her perspective on her seeing her mother doubt herself a lot. And watching her, and the other thing she said out of that was she had to work really hard to build confidence. And so I was watching this after the movie and just thinking back on how Streep kind of like throughout the movie kind of does, you can see this like subtle building of confidence, kind of behind this timid veneer that she of self-doubt and, you know, submissiveness that she kind of wears, that it kind of like, and it starts like popping out more and more, you know, as you go through the film, kind of up to that climactic event. And I don't know, like one of the things that it kind of made me like chuckle to myself is it ends with her like the most assertive she's been the whole movie, you know, with the kind of I guess like antagonist of sorts character of in Arthur Parsons, and kind of telling him how it's going to be, and giving her peace. And then she's kind of like, well, I'm going to bed. And she walks out. But what I love visually is now the power dynamic has like completely flipped. She leaves the room, and then the men are just left like baffled, kind of with nothing to say. I think Fritz, the Tracy Letts character, kind of like chuckles. But the rest of the men are just kind of like baffled, and don't know what to do. And I just love, like, it's kind of like, it's almost like comical, that kind of power dynamic flip that happens in that moment. But it's not as powerful without how Streep subtly and slowly builds to that. And I guess it's in the script too.
Yeah, and it's not a drastic change. It's very much like in character, and even ironic, because she does it in a very like quote unquote feminine way. She's like, okay, I'm going to bed now, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's something that like a woman, and even they say it before, like the men's at a dinner party, the men start talking about politics, and the women are like, okay, that's our cue to go. And so she's like, okay, this is my cue. Like, I made the decision. I'm going to bed. I'm going to go do women things and like go wash my face or whatever kind of thing. Yeah. But what I really liked about that scene for me, as I was watching, and this is more into like acting and blocking, so I don't know if you want to like wait for this, or we can
jump into it.
So there's one character, Fritz, who is like a close advisor of hers. If you notice, Fritz and Kay are always like two shot like takes. They're two shots. They're like on the same level, or he sits down to be on the same level with her, or they're like standing up on the same level. With Bradley and with other men, they either like walk in front of her, they block her out, they edge her out of the screen, or they stand over her and she's like sitting down. At the end of this scene, she leaves and she walks up the stairs to her bedroom, and all the men are left there looking up as she leaves the screen and goes into her bed. So like at the end, the physicality of the scenes change, because now she's the one in power and they are the ones that are left looking up at her, instead of all the men throughout the whole film, well, not all of them except one or two, looking down on her, or like Bradley eventually being on par with her whenever he realizes, oh, she's actually like being a really brave person for all these things that she's doing, because of his wife.
Right.
Told him.
Right.
So that was just like
as
a
it
really
goes.
Great, really great like blocking and acting, and a thematic physical blocking for me.
Yeah.
That was like, oh, nice.
Yes, cinematic. Like visual, like, and when you were saying that, I was remembering too, the way the shot ends, the camera is above them. It's like the camera is looking down on all of them. And so that's just another like visual aspect of, now we're like looking down on all these men, like the audience too, through the lens of the camera. And so, yeah, I mean, there's so many little visual cues there, that, man, just Spielberg is really like, when he's on, he really is on in all of that like visual language, and I think he is in this throughout this movie. The other like thing that Meryl Streep specifically brought to this role is this movie could very easily like get over full of like Oscar quote unquote moments, and I loved that when it came to like the big decision, you know, are we going to publish or not, it's building up, and like I think in a lesser director and screenwriter and actress's hands, this would have been, the big Oscar moment where she gives the big, confident, Oscar-y speech, and she just kind of like stammers through, like, yeah, let's do it, let's publish it, and totally underplays like your expectations of how she's going to be in that moment, and yeah, Meryl Streep just like nails it, and it made me smile because yeah, she just like undercuts all of your expectations for that moment, but it's like so in character and so perfect, and still like in it. It's like that she's unsure, but she's going to make a decision, and it's going to be her decision and not anybody else's. And yeah, I just loved that moment too. That I think Meryl Streep nailed it on that. But yeah, I mean, so the other big player in this is obviously Tom Hanks, his fifth film working with Spielberg, and his last one to date. I don't know if they'll ever work together again. I guess it's possible, but yeah, Tom Hanks. This just kind of feels like par for the course, I guess, for Tom Hanks. It's like a really kind of perfect Tom Hanks role where he gets to like say a lot of good lines and kind of do some sort of like strange voice intonation. I don't know why Tom Hanks loves changing his voice so much, but he's kind of like lockjawed in this movie. I don't know if you noticed that, but he's like through the whole movie. But I don't know, it works. I don't know. What did you think about Hanks in this one?
Yeah, I don't have a lot. I mean, yeah, he's just being Tom Hanks. Maybe
Yeah.
that's why he changes his accent, because he's basically just being himself but with a different accent.
Yeah. He's like, I'll get bored if I don't change my voice. Yeah, I mean, he in one of my resources, it said that Tom Hanks used the term so relaxed that he invited the whole cast of the editorial team to his home the week before shooting. And they kind of spent a few days just like going over characters and stuff. And so he's just like, yeah, y'all come over and we'll talk about the characters. He's like on set in the special features, like telling everyone about the different kinds of typewriters, because apparently he's a collector of typewriters and is
Oh, cool.
nerding out over typewriters on set. Yeah, just being Tom Hanks.
Right.
But yeah, he's good. I think what's especially good is that him and Meryl Streep together, they work off of each other so well. And that's another thing that stood out to me is in Bridge of Spies. I remember Spielberg talking about when Tom Hanks and Mark Rylance were on screen together. He started realizing, oh, these two guys are like playing off of each other so well. Maybe I don't need to do as much cross-cutting and over-the-shoulder shots for the dialogue scenes. Maybe I just need to have them both in frame. And so when I was watching this, and right off the bat, Meryl Streep walks in and sits down with Tom Hanks at the breakfast table for their first interaction that you see together. And I think he starts and ends the scene with a couple of cross-cutting over-the-shoulder shots in the dialogue, but the vast majority of that whole scene is just both of them sitting in frame. And I was thinking, oh, I know exactly what he's doing. He's letting just these two kind of top-tier actors be on screen at the same time and just letting them play off of each other, and no need for editing. No need for any of that. I'm just going to put them both in frame in the master shot and let the audience kind of have fun watching this dynamic. So I thought that was a great choice and kind of showed how well they worked together as actors. I don't know if you noticed that particular thing or not, but
I did notice that. I also noticed that, like, whenever he goes to her house the first time, and he's trying to tell her to talk to McNamara,
Yeah.
I noticed, I think that's the first or second time that I noticed in this film, there's these weird 3/4 over the shoulder angles. They're not quite over the shoulder, and it's like 3/4 of like the person that's, in this case, he's standing up.
Yeah.
But now that you're saying like, oh, like he trusts them both to carry the scene together without having to cut back and forth. It makes a lot more sense. But to me, it was just like, in that specific scene, you can feel the tension because, like, yes, he's a man trying to tell this woman what to do, but also she's the boss. So he kind of like confronts her, but like 3/4 of the way, he's not really looking at her. He's kind of looking down. And then she gets up, looks at him, like brings the power dynamic of like, I'm the boss here. And then she leaves the room again. And she asks him, you know, like, well, what about when you were in friends with Kennedy? Like, what about that, you know? So, yeah, it's the dynamics between the two, as it changes, as it progresses, is really interesting and fun to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think where the editing comes into play is less like in those dialogue scenes and more in what about you and Kennedy? And then like either the next shot or like within the, like after the next like little sequence, what do you see? Well, you see Tom Hanks like picking up a picture of him and his like wife and the Kennedys and contemplating what, you know, you heard Kay point out to him. And so that's where the editing is doing its work, is in kind of connecting the progression of the character's growth. And because you'll have the same thing, Bradley will like push her on something and then she's kind of wrestling with that the next time you see her. And so I think that's, you know, part due to the editing, part due to the way they structured the screenplay. You know, they brought in Josh Singer, who wrote Spotlight, to kind of help Liz Hannah kind of build out the kind of structure of that because this is a 2-week span you're covering, and like it's a lot of just like conversations and people sitting in rooms, and so
not very interesting.
Yeah, so you really have to like, how are we going to structure this to like really move things forward in the story?
And I think that also was done in the editing. A lot of the action happens in like moving from one place to another by either gophers, messengers, or tracking boxes of documents.
Yes. Having the camera run down a hallway with the guy that's like delivering the, you know, the new papers to I can't remember, the New York Times guy, Shaheen or something like that. Sheehan, yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, all kinds of stuff like that. The camera's like doing all of that.
Because all the other times you just have people talking to each other.
Right.
You gotta put some action in there.
Yeah, exactly. What were there any other like actors that stood out other than like the top two to you in this one?
I don't think so. I can't remember. I just remember. I mean, this is 2017. It's not even that long ago. But
right.
I saw. What was it? The guy that plays. Parsons, I think. I watched The Intern a while ago. And he's one of the main characters. And then I was like, oh, there he is, like a lot younger. But I was like, it wasn't even that long ago. So it was just like, oh, there's an actor that I've seen in something else. And and it was interesting. Yeah, but
Bradley Whitfield is that actor. Yeah, Arthur Parsons. He's like the kind of the antagonist-ish kind of guy on the board, I think. But yeah. Yeah, he's like that character is one of the is like an example of there's these different people that we can't have all of these characters, so let's kind of smash all of these real life people into a
Oh,
fictional character so that and then he kind of plays as like the foil, the antagonist of sorts to Streep kind of throughout the movie, to Kay, I
okay. I
guess.
found the actor I was, and it's The Resident, actually, not The Intern. The Intern is a film. The Resident is a medical drama, and actually it's McNamara, the guy that plays McNamara, Bruce Greenwood.
Yeah,
It's
Bruce
like, oh,
Greenwood.
there's that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's good in this movie. I almost wish the movie would have leaned a little bit more into that dynamic of him and Kay, and like that struggle of like, can I still like love my friend through this situation, this person that I've like built a relationship with, and like our
Yeah,
families have been close. Maybe that's like a little bit of a different movie than we got,
yeah.
but it would have been interesting to see the story lean into that a little bit more, I guess.
And
Um,
I also wonder if that was just more on her side than his side. I mean,
oh yeah,
definitely, she's like,
yeah,
hey, there is history here. They were there when her husband died.
hmm
But I think he has seen them as newspaper owners from day one. So that's more strategic on his side than like, hey, we're friends and we've
right,
known each other for a really long time.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, and yeah, it's it would have been interesting, yeah, and I do think you're right. Like it's more of Kay's wrestling than this guy is probably. He's already made his decisions and has his kind of. You can tell he's kind of set in his opinions of what he did. So um, I don't think he's going to be wrestling too much with that relationship. But other cast members to kind of touch on: Sarah Paulson, solid background in TV. She plays Tony Bradley, Ben Bradley's wife. She actually had played the prosecutor on the uh, Inside Look: The People versus O.J. Simpson in 2016, alongside Bruce Greenwood, who appears in the film as well. Uh, but yeah, so there's a lot of good as we go through the cast, a lot of like people with a background in TV or a background in theater that they're kind of pulling from. Bob Odenkirk, who's great in this movie. He's kind of, I guess, my third favorite actor in the movie, playing Ben Bagdikian. He kind of had made a name for himself playing Saul in Breaking Bad, and Plemons worked on that with him. There's a lot of like interconnections with people in the cast, which is fun. He also had a connection with David Cross. They were like this comedy duo. There was a HBO show called Mr. Show, and there was another sketch show they did called With Bob and David. They were kind of like, they talked about being nervous about Spielberg, like what you would think about hiring this comedy duo to do this serious movie. But Spielberg didn't have any idea about their connection when he cast them, and didn't find out till later, which was funny. Um, and then you have Tracy Letts playing Fritz Beebe. Um, he's a theater actor, a theater background, obviously has been in films, but this was actually his first time starring alongside his wife, Carrie Coon, who played one of the editorial team, Meg Greenfield, one of the few women on editorial teams at the time, and felt kind of a kindred spirit with Kay for that reason. But yeah, they're both great in the movie. Bradley Whitfield playing Arthur Parsons, who is, as I've said, is a fictional amalgamation of real people. Bruce Greenwood, we mentioned. There's a few people that have like been in Spielberg produced shows. Greenwood was in The River. Matthew Rhys, who plays Daniel Ellsberg in the movie, was in a Spielberg produced show called The Americans. And Rhys even got to like meet with Ellsberg during preparation. He talked about how he was asking Ellsberg how he felt. Was he scared? And Ellsberg saying no, that he wasn't scared because he felt such a strong conviction about what he was doing, which I thought was cool. Allison Brie pops up for a couple of scenes as Lally Graham, the daughter of Catherine Graham. Yeah, she talked about studying her interviews and doing. She even did some vocal coaching so she could match Meryl Streep, which is fun. David Cross, another editorial team member, and Howard Simons. He's really good in the movie. Jessie Mueller plays Judith Martin, which is her. This is her first movie, and she's great. She's one of the reporters that comes in every once in a while. Stark Sands playing Don Graham. He pops up a few times. He even talked about he researched and found some of Graham's articles from 1971 and typed them out on set, which is fun. We talked about mentioned Jesse Plemons. He plays Roger Clark, and Zach Woods plays Anthony Assay, the two kind of lawyer characters. Michael Stuhlbarg plays Abe Rosenthal, who's the New York Times, owner, publisher. And then I thought I would mention a couple other like small players. Will Denton was Michael the intern. I thought he did a good job, peeking over the shoulder of the New York Times guys in the elevator. And then, of course, Sasha Spielberg makes an appearance as the woman with the package, which leads to a funny scene. I can let's go into the production. This was, like I said, it was a very quick production. I think they were only filming for 44 days. And then, which is his like most tight filming schedule since Duel, which was a made for TV movie. So he was on a TV schedule for that. And so this is like his tightest filming schedule since all the way back at the beginning of his career with Duel. And so, yeah, it kind of shows, I guess, like we really want to make this movie and get it out there. But yeah, I mean, they finished shooting this in July of 2017, and by the end of the year, the movie was out. So, and Spielberg didn't even read the script until February, and so, yeah, I guess that's like 9-10 months, I guess, or so, from like start to finish. Which is crazy.
A lot of it was indoors, inside shots. I mean,
yeah,
you can't
it does.
Tell. There's like only a couple, not many outside. Lot studio areas. So.
Yeah, a lot of so they did like the Vietnam scene was in Purchase, which is there's the State University in New York at Purchase, and there's like a nearby like field that they used to stand in for Vietnam. So that was one exterior, and there's not a lot that was probably just like a couple of days of shooting. And then other than that, the only exteriors are like the outside of the Bradley house or the outside of the Supreme Court, which those are just like shooting a house in Brooklyn, or the Supreme Court was Columbia University. So yeah, those are really the only exteriors, and it's very, very little. They did use these like abandoned floors of an AT&T building that was being converted to something else that was in White Plains, New York. They use that for like a lot of the interior offices. So like the editorial offices, Kay's office, the DNC office that we see at the end, the Rand Corporation offices, all of that stuff is in this like these abandoned floors that weren't being used in this building. So it's always fun to like see, hey, like I don't know, I guess it would be interesting. I've never been on the backside of that, of like who's making the call, like, hey, we see you're redoing this building, do you have any floors we can use? Like how did those conversations start? I don't know.
Location scouting.
Yeah, a few other like locations. The exterior of the Bradley house was shot in Brooklyn, And then kind of all around there, Steiner Studios in Brooklyn was the interiors of the Bradley and Graham homes. Just down the street, you have Woodside Press, is a printing company in Brooklyn. That's where they shot the linotype process of the the newspaper process, and the printing process, that is. And then the New York Post in Bronx is where they shot the paper presses, where you have the papers flying through, and all that. So those are a few other notable locations. Yeah, Spielberg, he had just gotten done with this complicated special effects film in Ready Player One, and felt really free and in his element on this set. Tom Hanks talked about how he's such a good regulator of the tempo of the scenes as they're shooting, and just does a great job. Also, just he's a great actor's director, very proficient notes only when necessary, and yeah. One fun fact: they got to celebrate Katharine Graham's 100th birthday. What would have been her 100th birthday on set? They had a cake, and Spielberg actually gifted everyone a subscription to the Washington Post. He even included a note with a quote from Kay that said, "To love what you do and feel that it matters. How could anything be more fun?" Which I thought was kind of a nice little tribute. A few a few other cinematography things. Just thinking about, they have one juxtaposition I thought was funny was the handheld camera when the Viet Cong attacks in the jungle of Vietnam, and then the other time the handheld camera kind of shows up is when they're digging through all the Pentagon papers in Ben Bradley's house, trying to do their research, and you have this camera jostling around it all. I thought that was a funny juxtaposition of that camera use. And you get some other fun stuff like this quasi documentary style linotype and printing press stuff was fun to see. Seeing Spielberg, figure out, how do I make phone calls interesting? I'm gonna, have Bob Odenkirk's distorted face reflected in the payphone. I'm gonna multiply the number of people on the phone with Kay Graham and be cutting back and forth between all of them. I'm gonna have a Hitchcock Dial M for Murder style camera circling around Kay Graham while she's trying to make her decision on the phone. A lot of stuff like that. Spielberg just injecting energy into situations that normally would not have that much energy. And yeah, just in general, with lots of time in the newsroom, Janusz Kaminski kind of talked about this is a lot of bright top-lit rooms. How do I work with this? And somehow he really makes it look beautiful. The Streep talked about how beautiful the movie is, despite how often you're in offices and dinner parties. So I thought that was cool. The look of this film is really interesting. It's a lot of a vote. One of the things I thought was interesting, and I'd like to hear your kind of view on, is both Spielberg and Janusz Kaminski, the cinematographer, talked about how they wanted to both evoke the 1970s and in the way they shot it, and obviously create sets that were made to look like Washington D.C. in the 70s, but at the same time they even Janusz specifically said, this movie felt so relevant to today that I didn't necessarily want to light it like I would normally light a period movie. And so a lot of his lighting, he kind of tries to stick to more modern, how you would, light a movie set today. And so I don't know, I guess I didn't really think about that in watching the film, but in hindsight, it does feel even though it's set in the 70s, I guess it does have some sort of vibe of being very modern, in a way. I don't know. Did you Did you get that vibe at all?
Yes, but I also got a different vibe.
Hmm.
And what I was impressed by was, so there seems to be a change in lighting
Hmm.
as the tension builds. When we start inside shots, and specifically Bradley's office is very brightly lit. And
Mm-hmm.
as they get, like, the news breaks out and then they get the papers, his office gets darker and darker.
Hmm.
In other areas, and we go to Kate's house, and we are like in her office for a while.
Yeah.
And there's very warm tungsten-y lighting.
Mm-hmm.
But what I saw, what I started seeing, was almost this chiaroscuro, which is like this Caravaggio like lighting kind of thing. These very dramatic
Yeah.
lighting situations, and it kind of starts with when, I can't remember, the other Ben goes to see Dan,
Yeah,
and he
and
goes
the
to see Dan
hotel.
at the hotel, and
Yeah.
everything is dark, and you start getting those half lit faces all the
Mm-hmm.
time, except for Kay. Kay is always very brightly lit because she's like
Yeah.
truth and like naivete.
It's like
But
it's
everyone else,
oh,
yeah,
I was gonna say it's very like German expressionist, like Night of the Hunter, like um what's the movie I'm trying to think of? The like quintessential German expressionist movie that I can't think of the name of in this moment.
I don't know
Um
why my mind keeps going to the cabinet of Dr.
that's a,
Caligari.
that's what I was trying to think of. Yeah.
Okay.
The quintessential German expressionist movie using the shadows on faces and stuff. It's like
Yes.
yeah,
But this is
definitely
very
saw that.
soft. I mean, yes, like German expression is more harsh.
Sure,
Lighting,
yeah.
this one is soft, but also you have like the shadows and people. So and then you start getting the dramatic poses, postures as well.
Mm-hmm.
You start getting the actors blocking in such a way that it's like Caravaggio has like these groups of people, like, and the different layers and heights in a scene, or in a frame, all kind of pointing in one direction, and then like one person being, the center of the frame or of the image, and the lighting just being so dramatic, and that for me was really interesting to see. It kind of peaked for me in that scene where she, like the last scene where she makes the ultimate decision. She's even like the only one dressed in white. There's all these men like surrounding her, like hunching over her,
Yeah.
and around her, and there's like very dramatic postures and lighting, and she's like the one that holds the gravitas of that scene and the lighting of that scene, with like her white dress, her like fully lit face, and then
Yeah.
stands up and gives their back to them to make like to announce that she's made a decision. But yeah, like that, the lighting, for me, that's what I liked about it.
Yeah.
It got dramatic.
Yeah. And even like when you were saying that, I was thinking about when she does like over the phone make the decision to publish, and you kind of have that like descender rig camera that's like spinning around her, and it is this very like dark kind of like dramatic. You have those like oranges and shadows, and yeah, it kind of helps build the tension too, with the way it's kind of like lit and framed in those ways. Um, it, it adds just that like extra oomph of tension to moments where that, Spielberg is like, when he's on his A game, he's like one of the best, I think, at building tension. And I think this movie is like a very good example of that, because this movie shouldn't feel as like tense as it is, but he like, even like subtle things like at the beginning when Ellsberg is like leaving with the documents that he's stolen, and he pauses at the door for a second, and just that, like, it's only like what, like 3 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds in reality, but it feels so long, it's so tense. um and then like the kind of pause before Kay finally makes her decision to publish. There's this kind of like and even I think John Williams said he had this like sustained note that he like sustained until she finally spoke what her decision was. So you have the score kind of playing into that too. But yeah, all of that,
Which
so good.
which the score was interesting for me because it was very subtle.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
I thought so too.
feel the score and so much, and I wonder if part of that decision is this is a film about journalism, and journalism seeks to be as subjective as possible without manipulating the audience and having so much more of a in your face kind of score would be
Sure.
like blatant manipulation. But also like you have Meryl Streep and
Tom Hanks.
like
Yeah.
playing, so you don't really
Yeah.
need a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of handholds for the audience to like know how to feel or react.
Yeah. And I think too there's a surprising amount of like sound design in this movie. Like you wouldn't think in a movie about journalism, but it being set in the 70s, when you're in the newsroom, there's constant noise happening. And so like if you were to have like a score trying to compete with the sound of 100 typewriters typing, it would probably be too like cacophonous and distracting. And so they probably like were thinking about that sound element too. How are we going to like marry this sound with the score so that they're not like competing with each other? Because really like the score only comes in big in those like dramatic moments that are like quiet. Like the other moment I can think of is like at the very end when she's like announcing the Supreme Court decision in their favor, and the score kind of swells in with this like victorious sounding like kind of John Williams classic kind of sounding score. But that's like a quieter moment. It's not like there's not a lot going on there. This movie, the score for this movie, first of all, this is the 44th year of Spielberg and John Williams working together. So that's pretty awesome. But yeah, Spielberg was in a hurry to get John Williams an edit. They went through the editing process of this movie, I guess, pretty quick. And yeah, John Williams was able to deliver the score 3 weeks after shooting. So really fast turnover there, getting that recorded. It was the first time that Spielberg didn't actually get to hear John Williams do his like piano demos of themes before the scoring sessions. But yeah, not a lot to talk about with the score's not terribly memorable. It has its moments that it kind of comes in, but yeah. As far as like production design, you have Rick Carter, of course. He talked about being draft age in the late 60s and was a very remembers this era well. They're trying to recreate the 1971 DC. And one of the things I thought was cool was they didn't really focus on getting monuments in the movie. So you're in DC, but like getting that brutalist kind of architecture that is, part of DC's architecture and cityscape. And so that I thought worked well. The design of the bullpen, as they might call it, which is like the newsroom floor, was just great. Carter, Rick Carter makes this from scratch, really doesn't inject much color, going off of the memory of people that worked there at the time. And yeah, just brings in all these old typewriters that, of course, Hanks was nerding out over. Used photos of Ben Bradley's office to recreate it. And even Spielberg even talked about like a friend of his that had worked there at the time visited the set and was tearing up. Just, it felt like so real, which I thought was cool. Some props they were able to like look at the Pentagon papers at the National Archives to recreate those. They borrowed a photocopier from a museum or something like that, but they weren't allowed to plug it in. So this period photocopier, and so that I think it was a Xerox, but they had to like rig it with these lights and rig it so that the paper would come out to recreate the photocopying sequence at the beginning. They even like created 30 different newspapers based on papers of the time. They were able to get some old actual newspapers from the time to have around, tons of magazines, period magazines laying around. Yeah. And the other cool thing about the design, Carrie Coon was just talking about Anne Roth as the costume designer. One of the things that she loved was that when you go in to like get measured and work on your costume with Anne, she like teaches you things about the character that you haven't considered yet as an actor, even just with her research on how to costume this character. I thought that was a really cool thing that you don't really think about a whole lot. Yeah, this movie was released in December 22nd, 2017. That was the limited release. It really got its wide release January 12th, 2018. That's kind of when everyone would have been able to go see it. Yeah, it's interesting, this movie made 180.4 million dollars worldwide box office. Domestic was 81 million. And it opened number 2 at the box office. I believe number 1 was the Welcome to the Jungle. Oh my gosh, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle movie. But yeah, this was a $50 million movie. Opens at 19 million, gets to 180 million. So I would say that's a pretty successful Spielberg movie overall. Not the most, but it did its job. And as far as the reception to the movie goes, it was generally like really well received. The Conversation called it, quote, a love letter to the press and the journalistic profession, unquote. Variety reveled in a vision of the hectic journalism without computers and smartphones, which is a fun aspect of the movie for sure. The French publication Liberation loved the linotype and rotary presses and early morning truck deliveries of papers. The New York Times, despite their pre-production problems, welcomed the lively pace and energy. They said it was due to the, quote, virtuosic veteran crew, unquote. So there you go. And then some too like noted that Spielberg has this instinct to avoid like the gravity of the subject and not like, as I'll probably talk about later, not like lean out of the weight of it all, but like not weigh you down with it. Along those lines, The Guardian said, quote, it's the chaotic, absurd moment, unquote, when Kay haltingly approves the publication is the kind of example they give. It did suffer a little bit from comparison to something like All the President's Men, which many would say is the superior movie. Some questioned if the topical relevance was enough to justify the film being made. I think now with hindsight we can say absolutely it was. It had some factual criticism. It was reproached for poorly narrating the Pentagon Papers scoop, paying too little attention to Ellsberg. Former New York Times VP James Goodale, who was a legal rep for the Supreme Court in 1971, had talked about how the lawyer never mentioned the First Amendment before the Supreme Court, and the Post's initial offering was primarily to pay property taxes for shareholders, including Kay, not to hire journalists, as stated in the film. So, some people took issue with some facts. It's one of those things. It was nominated for 2 Oscars. It did not get any wins. But it was nominated for Best Picture and Lead Actress for Meryl Streep as Katharine Graham. Yeah, good stuff.
Hello again. Do you know how you can really support the show for free in just a few minutes or less? That's right. Just leave a rating and review on Spotify and Apple, or wherever you listen that might allow for ratings and reviews. These really help the visibility of the podcast. In fact, just hit that pause button right now and drop the review right now. And then you can get back to the show. I'd greatly appreciate it. Okay. I trust that you went and left that rating and review now. Back to the show.
But yeah, I know I don't have you for too much longer, so I just wanted to get maybe your perspective on some of the themes real quick that like, so we can either talk about kind of we've talked a decent amount about Katharine Graham and like, but we can talk more about that, or we can talk about the pertinence of the freedom of the press and speaking truth to power. What do you feel like is speaking to you most in this moment?
Yeah, I think the freedom of the press is quite pertinent at the moment.
Yeah.
We have to have the same precedent as we did when this film was made, and just thinking about what is happening, like even today, this week. There is a representative being held in the Texas House of Representatives because she won't sign a permission slip to be followed around. And not a lot of news outlets are covering that.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, for me, this made me think of a couple of things. Like, yes, we need freedom of the press. It made me question how free our press is at the moment.
Yeah. Same.
And it made me think about the democratization of news and who tells the news, who gets to tell the news. Made me think about media literature, and it made me think about how dangerous it can be to be a journalist. In some places, being a journalist is one of the most dangerous jobs that people can have.
Absolutely.
It made me think of the journalists that have been killed by Israel in Gaza, which Brown University's put out a study showing that more journalists have been killed in Gaza than have been killed in like several world wars and other wars. And so it's a dangerous thing to speak truth to power. We know that and we see that. And yet many more of us need to not just speak truth to power in the sense of like having an institution behind you and doing that in a formal way, but even just being a witness of what is happening is becoming dangerous nowadays. And we need to, like, yes, of course, not everyone can just record things.
Sure.
Because of different ways that people are being racially profiled. But whoever can should be have the courage, like Kay did, to do something. And sometimes the courage it takes is to take out your phone and record something that's happening that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, you know, this was the 70s, and really, like, you know, the newspapers were it, you know, that was where you got your news. I mean, there's TV news back then too, but like the real journalism, I think, was still seen to be like in the big papers, like the Times and that sort of thing. People like knew who those journalists were, like they knew their names, back then, I think. And I don't know. There's also like it made me, while you were talking, it made me kind of think about how there's a certain sense to which like we have such an inundation of recordings that it's almost like hard to dig through the noise of it all and find the truth. And I think that's one reason why like journalism is so important, because that's what a good journalist does is you might have like all these recordings of this situation that happened from all these different vantage points and hearing different people say different things, but like it's easy to like read what you want into all of that noise. And what a good journalist, I think, does is they take all of that noise, they kind of like push out the stuff that's just like, I guess, like actually just noise, and dig down to what's actually happening and what is like the crux of the matter. And I don't know, I think one of the reasons like our media and news is so like wild and just like divided is a little bit because of that, because everything is so noisy. It's harder to like find people that are like really trying to do some like I get like some audio engineering on what we're hearing in the world, you know. It's tough. It's just tough. It's just tough for like the average everyday person. Like, who do I trust? Like, who can I even listen to that's not like beholden to this politician or that this political party, or or that's not, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's tough.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think media literacy is so important for everyone.
Yeah.
Because if you start following someone on social media, let's say, for example, or even a newspaper who is a reputable source,
Mm-hmm.
and you start seeing the kind of headlines or the kind of messages that they start putting out, after a while you'll get a sense for how this person thinks, the biases that they hold, because no newspaper is actually objective, and no person is objective. We cannot be.
Mm-hmm.
We come with our own social location and context, and that's how we interpret what we experience.
Agreed.
So I think for me, what a good journalist does is be aware of their own social location and their own conscious and unconscious bias.
Mm-hmm.
And they are good synthesizers. They get all the information. They're truth seekers. They seek a lot of stuff. They seek everything. They get a bunch of information, and then they corroborate between each of those things, right? They're like, oh, this person says this other person says this, oh, there's this camera angle, or there's this other things. They put the picture together, and then they synthesize what actually happened for everyone else to clearly understand what it is that happened.
Right.
And that's where people can they can become informed and make more informed decisions about whatever the issue may be. But if we are not literate, and if we are not taught to be literate, then we can't recognize the patterns of someone saying opinions instead of facts, or we can't recognize when someone is biased and they don't name it, or when we are in an echo chamber and we're like, well, these are the news, like this is what I think, so this should be right. Or when channels aren't actually news but actually entertainment, and news is just in their name.
Right. Yeah. And I think another big thing on that is like the distinction between information and truth. A lot of people, it's easy to get a bunch of information but like you said, like synthesizing that information or like distilling it down to like what is the truth found in all of this information is different than just like throwing around information that like backs up what you may already believe or that sort of thing. And so, you know, living in the information age doesn't actually mean that we have more like truth just because we have more information at our hands. Yeah, I love that. I was going to ask one more thing along all of these lines. In related to the film, it really takes obviously it's kind of like this teamwork that like grows and builds between Kay and Ben over the course of the movie. And Ben obviously has like his strong opinion on what needs to be done. But at the end of the day, it's Kay's call. It's her decision to make. And my question for you, and I think you're like a perfect person to like answer this question is, and I kind of know the answer's not going to be, the answer is going to be like, yes, and like, it doesn't have to be, but does it take someone who has experienced some sort of what's the way to put it? Like Kay has experienced in her lifetime just being stepped down and looked down on, kind of in all ways except maybe sometimes explicitly being told that like her opinion doesn't matter. Does it take kind of someone who is able to like rise out of that kind of like oppression to speak the truth to power, to be able to like make those hard decisions? Have you noticed that there's more people that have come out of like some sort of, whether it be like gender dynamics or racial dynamics, and is able to speak truth to power because of what they've experienced? Do you find that that's something that happens often?
Well, I think in Kay's case,
Mm-hmm.
she also had power.
Yeah,
She had
a lot of
influence
privilege and power that she grew up with.
She was the owner of the newspaper, so
Right.
that's power.
Right.
So I think in a sense she recognized her power,
Mm-hmm.
which is a bit different than someone who would be like more disenfranchised, like a person
Right.
of color who is also a woman, you know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I think in that sense, like it takes everyone to speak truth to power. It
Right.
takes people that have influence and privilege to listen to people that don't have privilege and influence.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes the people that have been marginalized and oppressed to also speak up. And the thing is that many times the people that are oppressed do speak up,
Right.
but their people don't hear them.
Right.
And it's not that we need people to say like, oh, I'm going to speak for the people that don't have a voice. People have voices. We just need to platform their voices.
Yes. Yeah.
The people that have the privilege to do so. So it takes everyone to speak truth to power. But I think mostly it takes people that have some power to listen to those that don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
to
a great
be able
point.
to help others, to help move things forward.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And I think that's like, that distills down where something that I was like trying to put words to, but like wasn't quite getting there. I think you just helped me kind of finally find what I was trying to think through. Yeah. I think this movie is so like pertinent, so important. It's, I was listening to some podcast reviews of like back in 2017 when the post came out, and people were talking about this has a shot at a Best Picture nomination and all this. But one particular podcast I don't remember which one it was, but they were talking about how is this movie going to play in 10 years or 20 years? Is it so like caught up in our 2017 moment that it might like lose that like there's aspects of it that are like kind of always like inspirational and relevant, but like that kind of like political moment aspect of it, will that kind of just be lost? And I kind of like wrote down in my notes, like, little did they know, 9 years later, here we are, even worse than then. So yeah, it's still relevant, unfortunately. Yeah, I think I wrote down. Let's see if I can find it. There's this. I will end with. I'm going to read this quote from David Ehrlich in IndieWire, who's I really enjoy his. I don't know if you've ever read his film criticism, David Ehrlich, but he's one of those guys that like has strong opinions, and sometimes like I disagree with him greatly, and sometimes like we're in line, but like even when we disagree, I always love how he thinks through it and like writes about it. So but this is it's a little long quote, but it's I think it's a good way to like end our conversation and get your thoughts. He said, quote, "Once upon a time, a movie about the Pentagon Papers could have been framed as a cautionary tale, but now it only makes sense as an unabashed crowd pleaser. In that context, Spielberg is naturally the right director for the job. A master chef preparing an entire feast inside a pressure cooker, Spielberg shoots the post like every shot was delivered to the studio on a deadline, and the result is a film that combines the Spartan clarity of hard journalism with the raw suspense of an Indiana Jones adventure. His film simmers with liberal indignation, only boiling over at the very end, and the days leading up to Graham's decision are chaos told with clockwork precision." I think I love about like that quote to me is like he's pointing out the fact that this movie could have easily been, and in any other point in time, a cautionary tale sort of film. But with Spielberg directing in this particular political moment, it's almost like a joyful cinematic like response in a way, because the movie is fun. It's funny, it's fun, it moves, and it's in all of that, it's like saying something. It's almost like it's this kind of persuasive, like fun movie in this particular moment that it's like it's very Indiana Jones adventure at times, with the camera moving around Ben Bradley's house with like a handheld camera as they're like researching Pentagon Papers and making that fun somehow, but still like it took like in that moment that's so dark, it's like it's almost more important for this movie to be a little bit of less of a dark movie in a dark moment and more of like a lighter movie that still takes the subject very seriously and speaks persuasively against what's happening in the moment, but does it like in kind of the opposite way with lightness and fun, and the gravity of it all doesn't weigh you down, if that makes sense. Like you don't like, I guess like another movie of very similar content, like the journalism and revealing something, Spotlight, it kind of leaves you weighed down with the weight of it all. And this movie, you feel more like uplifted at the end. And I think that was important for that moment, and I think it is for this moment too. There is still kind of a hope that you see in this movie. And I don't know, I just wanted to, before you go, get your take on all of that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true, and that's what movies are made for.
Yeah.
So I don't see what's wrong with that. They
Yeah.
are made for the audience to enjoy. And in it being a historical film in which majority of the people will know part of this history, or at least the ending, and because it ends very tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
It ends with...
It's a prequel.
Yeah, it's a prequel to what we all know, you know,
Yeah.
Watergate, like, with Nixon trying, you know, on this phone call to make sure that nothing else like this happens, and then like right away, it's already happening.
Yeah.
It does give hope. It gives hope, and it gives the audience a like, oh, but we know better. That you know, in the end, the truth prevails.
Yeah.
And I think in moments like that, there's nothing wrong with that kind of goal, even.
Yeah.
In telling a story, and being able to tell the story for a moment in the way that this was told, because films don't always get to do that.
No.
They might be inspired by a moment, and like they don't get out to the public until like 2 years later, 1 or 2 years later, and this one was able to meet its moment when it was needed and would still be relevant. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and it just makes me respect Spielberg a little bit more, because he's an example of like using your power to get because the normal everyday like director, you know, isn't going to get this movie and be able to say, we're putting this movie out this year. It's really like only guys like Spielberg can do that, and a studio be like, yes sir, you know. And so, you know, it just, I guess it kind of like raises the respect level of him, who like is always like, if not always hitting the mark with trying to like speak into situations. I think he's had his misses with that, but he's always sincerely trying, even in his misses. And I think this was a hit. I think he like nailed the moment, and used his kind of mogul Hollywood power to make it happen. So gotta respect the man, old Stevie. So but yeah, any final thoughts before I let you go, Roslyn?
Yeah, this was really fun. I really enjoyed watching a film, and like I did back in my school days, and like pausing and being like, wait, what did they say? Or like, wait, am I saying this correctly? Like, yes, it was fun too.
Yeah,
Be a bit
great.
more critical. I mean, it kind of just happens in my brain. Like once you learn to watch films in a certain way, you can't undo it. Like, you know, we see camera angles, like we see, you know, all those things, the lighting and all of that.
Yeah.
But it was nice to do it in a more intentional way this time.
Yeah. Well, I had fun. I think you brought some great insight that I really appreciate to the conversation. And yeah, maybe we'll be able to bring you back on sometime in the future. We'll see. I don't know what's in the future of the podcast, but you never know. But thanks, Roslyn, for coming on. It's been really fun.
Thank you for having me.
Hello there, listener. Don't you ever want more for your life? Don't you ever dream of surpassing the status of just podcast listener? Well, I've got good news. If you head on over to establishingshotpod.com and click the send a voicemail button on the right side of your screen, you can be featured on the podcast. I'd love to hear from you, whether it's a comment in response to an episode you liked, an opinion of mine you disagreed with, or just a question for me. And if you're too shy to have your voice featured, you can always email me at establishingshotpod@gmail.com. Don't settle for just being a podcast listener. Reach for the stars and get featured on The Establishing Shot. Back to the show.
thought I'd point out some Spielberg distinctives, as we like to do. For one, just fun shots in general. The opening of the box of documents and seeing everyone like peering in, fun shot like that. Low close-ups, of course. So many reflections, probably leaning into the idea of like reflecting the same problems of the world now of back then, that sort of thing. Building tension, efficient character building. You like, for instance, you know everything you need to know about Kay and Ben's relationship from their first meeting together. Great stuff there. The kind of injecting energy with the camera that Spielberg does. Lots of scenes that would be boring without it. And then like comedic interjections too. Some examples I wrote down: Ben Bagdickian dropping the coins at the payphone, the guy who gets the first package of the Pentagon Papers from Sasha Spielberg, and he's trying to like describe who it was as Ben Bradley's like totally ignoring him and trying to move get the papers, something published. Ben constantly crashing Kay's parties is funny. There's a lot of like good comedic moments in this movie. And then the last like big Spielberg thing is just the framing. So many examples of how Spielberg is just excellent in filling out a frame and blocking the shot just right. So good. I did want to point out like a few things that, were just interesting shots or sequences. You have, first of all, Nixon stuff. It was a great choice to just not show Nixon close up, use the like far away shots of his back and use the real recordings. I thought that was a great decision. The other, I think the only other big thing was just like the scenes throughout of emphasizing the importance of Kay as a woman in a man's world. You got like the tracking shot following her into the boardroom, past all the women who are outside the closed doors, going in through the closed doors, into a sea of men for the boardroom meeting, and having to hold her own in that. Then you have her walking down the Supreme Court steps at the end through a crowd of women watching her, which, by the way, was not in the script. That was like a Spielberg in the moment idea. Her, going to bed and leaving a room full of baffled men behind, as we've talked about. Those are some other like interesting scenes that I thought were worth bringing up. Just as we're closing, I thought I would do just kind of a final thought with about going further into speaking truth to power. I have some more David Ehrlich quotes because I really liked some of how he wrote about this movie. One of them, he said, quote, "The Post offers profound testament to the idea that America only works when all people are granted the voice they deserve. It only works when everyone is held accountable, and everyone can only be held accountable when the press is free to pursue the truth. In a movie that contains at least two of the best scenes that Spielberg has ever shot, watching Streep stumble across that truth makes for one of them." Unquote. I thought that was really good. And then, we have to continue to speak truth to power. Just in closing, we can't give our rights over to a political party, to an institution. We can't give up our right to question authority. We can't give up our right to think critically about the decisions of our politicians just because we hate the other side. We should not give up that critical thinking. I talked about how at the time critics were wondering if this would still be relevant in 10 years, 20 years, and it even more so is. And along those lines, I have one more David Ehrlich quote. This is another long one. He said, quote, "If we're lucky, the film will feel like a relic in 10 years. If we're not, it might be relevant again in 20. Today, when it matters most, The Post is essential because it stares down cynicism with a smile, because it enshrines the fact that governments only see journalists as a threat when they have something to hide. And of course, because it separates the value of journalists from the horrors they uncover. Allowing us an unalloyed appreciation for their work can change the world. It's all there in the film's other all-time Spielberg moment, as Bagdikian sits down at his typewriter, right as the printing press groans to life in the basement and the whole building starts to heave. He can feel the earth moving under his feet, and so can we," unquote. I just feel like we need to learn from history and speak truth to power. Use whatever influence and power we have to give voices to people who don't. We cannot let our political persuasions blind us and allow ourselves to be put in echo chambers. We have to listen to each other. We have to hear these stories. We have to learn how, as Roslyn was saying, to be media literate and dig through all the crap to find, the truth. It's becoming ever more important in a world of information that, is twisted and turned and, played with, and we have to still pursue truth in the midst of that all, and to pursue justice as well. And so that's kind of my final thought. That's what this movie had me thinking about. And yeah, I personally have this movie as like a mid-tier Spielberg. I have it like 4-star, 8 out of 10. I think it's really great. I actually bumped this up. I noticed I had a 3.5-star rating on it from back in 2018, I guess, when I saw the movie in theaters. And yeah, I'm like, I was looking at that. I was like, no, this is a 8 out of 10 movie. This is a great movie. I have it right up there with, Bridge of Spies and Lincoln and West Side Story. I think that kind of like trio of Lincoln, Bridge of Spies, and The Post is a great little trio of like Spielberg showing you, great people making hard choices and doing the right thing. And yeah, those make for a really great, like, it would be a good, interesting marathon to throw those 3 movies on back to back. But yeah, great movie. And yeah, I really had fun. I'm glad Roslyn was able to join me. Her popping in and out of this podcast has been, she had some great insights. So, I will put like more, I'll put her like website and social media stuff on, the episode description. So you can just go click that and follow her, there. But yeah, next week we have, kind of a throwback movie draft. A while back we did a writers and movies draft. I thought that would be a good one to pair with this because I didn't have a new one. And so, yeah, that'll be fun for that writers and movies draft to have its own episode now. And it was a fun one, so look forward to that. And then, yeah, we'll pick back up with Ready Player One the next week, and it's going to be fun. I already recorded that conversation, and it's going to be a good one. So looking forward to that. But until then, I've been Eli Price, and you've been listening to The Establishing Shot. We will see you next time.
We were happy here. For a little while.
But look, I figure it this way. Better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime.